Hello everybody and welcome back to another video, and today I am doing another World Cup review on day 12 and day 13. Games involving Georgia, who played Fiji, Ireland, who played Russia, and South Africa, who played against Italy. So let's get straight into it. The first game was Georgia versus Fiji, and this one, well, I think this was dictated through, I keep saying this, but I think this was dictated through the 4-day turnaround for Georgia. They had a 4-day turnaround after the Uruguay game on the Sunday, and then they come into this one against Fiji, a big game for them especially, to try and finish third. And when you have that 4-day turnaround and you're playing against a fired up Fiji side whose last game was a shock loss to Uruguay, it's always going to be tough, and they found it very tough. The first half was, as I thought it would be, a close contest. Very, very close. I think both teams could have edged it either way. Fiji were playing their way, Georgia were playing their way. I think Georgia's scrum wasn't going very well. For some reason this World Cup, their scrum hasn't seemed to be going as well as people may have thought. I thought their scrum was one of the best in this World Cup. I thought they'd just roll over other scrums. But that wasn't the case, and it hasn't been the case for this World Cup. It's actually been quite a weak point. They've won a couple of penalties from them, but not as many as you would think. And against a Fiji side who don't base everything off their scrum, who aren't the best in the scrum anyway, it was quite shocking to see how poor they were in the scrum at times, Georgia. And I think part of that is where they also lost a game. But I also think that they couldn't maintain Fiji, and that was an issue. They couldn't maintain them. They were struggling to keep them at bay, and Georgia have a decent defence, but when you've got an attack like Fiji have, when you could just pull out tricks out of anywhere, I mean, you know, they're going to score tries, and I think Georgia struggled to maintain them. The first half, as I said, close, not a lot in it. Fiji were there, Georgia were there, they were both firing shots at each other now and again, but it was the second half where this game was won. And I keep saying this, but yes, I do think the 4-day turnaround hurt Georgia, because they put all their effort into the Uruguay game, and then they have to come into this one against a fired up Fiji side who have had a 10-day rest after their shock loss to Uruguay, and that showed, because they were all over them and in that second half, and they ran try and try and try. It was quite close enough. In the second half it was close, but come around the 20th minute mark, that's when Fiji started to go through with 20 minutes remaining on the clock, and Fiji's just started to fire more shots. They were pushing them back, they were using their backs, they were playing beautiful rugby, and they just won the game through there. And the Fiji we saw was vintage Fiji. It's the usual Fiji. It's the Fiji that everyone knows and loves. And we saw glimpses of this Fiji when they played Australia earlier on in the group stages, but we didn't see it against Uruguay. We saw it again against Georgia in abundance. They looked fired up. They looked like they wanted to win the game, and they managed to. And it's a big game for both teams. They both want to finish third in this group. They both want to re-qualify for 2023. And Fiji have put one step into doing that by beating Georgia, and beating them well in the end, beating them very well. Managing to rack up 45 points is something else, especially when you're playing against another Tier 2 nation who is relatively close to you in the rankings in comparison, and to put 45 points on a close rival like Georgia, on someone who is at the same sort of level, is brilliant. And Fiji, in all honesty, they deserved it, because they were just the better team, and they grinded Georgia down. They had to make them work, they had to make them defend more than they wanted to, and that ultimately made Georgia tire out quicker, and Fiji had the momentum. Going into that second half, Fiji had the momentum. With that momentum, they played, They played how we like to see Fiji play, shipping the ball around left, right and centre and scoring the tries. And their tries were fantastic as well. So yeah, overall, Fiji deserve the win. They've got 1 foot into that third place spot to re-qualify. Both teams, Fiji and Georgia, have big games now. Georgia have Australia, Fiji have Wales. Both of them will be their last games of the tournament, and it'll be interesting to see who gets the upper hand in them ones. It looks like Fiji are going to get this third spot off Georgia, but if Georgia spring a surprise or get some sort of bonus point against Australia, they might have a little chance. But it looks like Fiji are going to win this race for the third place, and it's all thanks to the amazing performance they put in when they won 45 points to 10. So the second game I'm reviewing is Ireland versus Russia, and I'm just going to start by saying how well Russia have done in this tournament. They have exceeded anyone's expectations. They may have lost against Ireland 35 points to 0, but my God have they exceeded expectations. To think before the World Cup they lost to Jersey, they lost to Connacht, they got thrashed against Italy in the warm-ups. You know, to think they had those results and then they only concede 35 against Ireland. They get within 20 points of Japan. They push Samoa close even with a 4-day turnaround. They've just done brilliantly, and full credit to them. They have made their nation proud because no one gave them an inch. No one thought they would be anywhere near other teams. They thought they'd just get pummeled all the way, and they really haven't. They've put up such a stern fight, and they did again against Ireland. Granted, they didn't really have many chances. They had about one chance, I think, in the first half, 5 metres away from the try line, had a line out and they scuffed it. But their defending was, well, I can't say it was brilliant, but it was good. It was great scrambling, and they stopped Ireland. They really did. They were aggressive at the breakdown. They really worried Ireland at the breakdown. They were all over them in that aspect of the game. Ireland had to really work hard. And I feel like Ireland had to work harder than they would have expected to. And I don't think Ireland gave a lot in this game, but I think once they knew Russia were there and wanted to play, Ireland stepped up their game a little bit. And even by stepping up their game, I don't think Ireland played brilliantly. I think they were a bit loose, they were a bit ragged, they were a bit forced. I don't think it was brilliant at all from Ireland. I think they were all over the place, to be honest. They weren't amazing, and I don't think they've really stepped up that much after the Japan game. I think everyone knew they were going to win, everyone thought they were going to win. They did, they got the 5 points, and that's important. But in terms of how well they played, I don't think they played brilliantly. They started well, they got a couple of tries early on, but they didn't get their bonus point until the 65th minute. Now this is big up for Russia, because they managed to hold Ireland to 3 tries up until the 65th minute, which is good, especially against a team like Ireland. But as well as that, Ireland were not firing on all cylinders. They just didn't look up for it at all. They were good to an extent. They were finishing off chances. They were punishing Russia for their mistakes. But they just didn't seem like the finished article at all. They just seemed a bit disappointing. And I think everyone may have been expecting a bit more. They may have been expecting them to go even further against Russia. But they just didn't. They just weren't there. And they struggled a bit, I think. At the end of the day, though, Ireland got the win. They got the 5 points. They won 35 points to 0. And that's good. They didn't concede. They kept going till the end, and they got a bonus point, and that's all that matters. That can give them confidence now going into their last game against Samoa, which is still a big one. They still need to win it to get into the quarters, but I still don't think it was amazing. But I've got to say, big up to Russia, because they did play very well. They wore their hearts on their sleeves. put their bodies on the line, and I think they've made their country very proud in this tournament. They can be proud of how they played against Ireland. Even though they didn't score, I think they played very well against a strong Ireland team. And this game was a contrast between a big team and a small team. It was David versus Goliath, and it was closer than everyone would have thought. But at the end of the day, Ireland got the 5 points, and they'll be looking to go a bit further, a bit better against Samoa to try and get that quarter-final spot that they want. So, the final game I'm reviewing in this video is South Africa versus Italy. Now, this one was a big game for both teams. Italy, if they won, they would have got into the quarter-finals for the first ever time, and South Africa, if they lost, they wouldn't have got through, but a win would have seen them step up their efforts to qualify and see them basically qualify. And it went South Africa's way. The whole game went South Africa's way. From the first whistle to the last whistle, it was all South Africa. And after the opening 2 games Italy had, you would have thought they would have upped confidence, but they just weren't in the game at all. And it just shows the gulf in class between the two nations. And it just shows how middle Italy are at the moment, how they can beat the Tier 2 nations by quite a big margin. But when they do face off against these Tier 1 nations, they struggle. And they struggled a lot. And it was due to their own errors, mainly, I believe. Mainly the red card for Lavotti. That was a stupid red card. A tip tackle in the clear out. No need to do it. He did it anyway, got a red card, and it really hurt his team. They had to go on contested scrums in the first place early on in the first half due to the fact that Italy had a lot of prop injuries in the game, and Lavotti getting sent off only worsened the matter. And from that red card onwards, it was all South Africa. Red card, I can't remember exactly when it was, but as soon as that red card went to Lavotti, South Africa just went full pelt and dominated for the rest of the game. Not that they weren't dominating beforehand, because I think they were. And really, I think Italy were just generally poor. Their attack was not really anywhere to be seen. They weren't giving the ball to the potent attackers often enough. They weren't giving it to Benvenuti. They weren't giving it to Minozzi. And I think the team sheet was a bit poor, really. Why Campagnaro was on the wing, I don't know. He's a centre. He should be in the centre. I don't really know why he was playing on the wing. And I don't think he played that well. I think he was quite poor today. With South Africa, though, I think they played very, very well. And it just shows that South Africa are a good enough team to win this World Cup, because they battered Italy in every facet of the game. Italy just couldn't get into it. South Africa were pushing them back. They were not allowing them to break through. And they only conceded 3 points against an Italian team which does have flair to it. This Italy squad can create chances, but South Africa stopped them from doing so. And they played brilliantly, South Africa. They may have lost early on to New Zealand in the group stages, but you can tell that that really hasn't dented their confidence much, because they've come into this game with a little bit of pressure, thinking that if they lose, they could be knocked out. And having that pressure, they excelled in it. And it was like they didn't have the pressure at all. They were just punishing Italy for every mistake they made. And there were a lot of mistakes from Italy. And it was quite a poor performance from their part, to be honest. I was hoping for a big game from Italy. I was hoping for them to show us what they can really do and maybe push South Africa, but didn't see that at all. And it's just we've known Italy for now. We've known Italy to play really well against Tier 2 nations, build confidence, get good go forward, but when they play against Tier 1 nations, they're just not good enough. It's like they're another class, and this is why I call them a middle team. They can't beat the Tier 1 nations, but they can really beat the Tier 2 nations, and they just don't know where they belong almost. It's tough, and South Africa are a very good team. I was expecting South Africa to win anyway, but I would have thought that Italy, with all that confidence they would have taken from the first 2 games, and getting 10 points out of 10, they could have at least taken a bit of momentum into this game and you know, maybe pull off a shock, but they were actually nowhere near. And it's all credit to South Africa because they played brilliantly, stopped Italy from doing anything, and yeah, as I keep saying, they just played really well, and Italy just weren't firing on all cylinders today. Italy, they have another chance to get into the quarterfinals, but that's going to have to be a real shock. They're going to have to pull some sort of rabbit out of the hat if they're going to do that, because of course they have New Zealand in their last game. It's numerically possible for them, but against this peak New Zealand side, I just don't see them doing it. For South Africa though, looks like they've qualified. Of course, numerically, they might not have qualified yet. We have to see if Italy beat New Zealand. Don't think they will, but it's looking like South Africa are through to the quarterfinals now. And we're in the business end. Teams are starting to know their fate, and for Italy, this was a big game. They needed to win, and it would have been so good for the nation if they would have won. But at the end of the day, they were dominated throughout the park, and South Africa fully deserved the victory. And South Africa go on looking forward to the quarterfinals, as it looks like they're going to make it now. Maybe second, but it looks like they're going to make it, as Italy miss out once again thanks to a 49-3 loss to South Africa. So yeah, that is my review of those games. Thank you everyone for watching. Put a comment down below what you thought of those games and what you think of the upcoming fixtures as well. Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in a bit.